Saturday mornings, sunlight filtered through the thin curtains of my childhood bedroom, casting soft patterns on the stark white walls. I sat cross-legged on the edge of my twin bed, phone in hand. Double-checking our weekend itinerary for the third time, my older brother Jared lounged against the closet door, his ever-present guitar case resting at his feet. Across the room, my younger sister Emily lay sprawled on her stomach, nose buried in a paperback romance novel. Both of them looked up as I tapped furiously at the screen. "You can't be serious," Jared muttered, pushing a lock of hair behind his ear. Emily lowered her book and rolled her eyes so hard I could practically hear it. "You plan bathroom breaks," she scoffed, flipping her book shut. I nodded earnestly. "Safety first, and hydration. And time for scenery," they exchanged. A look that said, as plainly as any words, "Here we go again." I clicked send on my group chat and watched our shared messages light up with my name at the top, a string of confirmation emails for our rent at RV, 3 nights of campsite reservations at national parks, and a playlist I'd curated based on each of our favorite genres. Jared's response was immediate. "You've officially lost your mind." Emily chimed in with a gif of a cartoon eye roll. I couldn't help but smile. They teased me endlessly about my obsession with details, color-coded packing lists, laminated maps, even a spreadsheet tracking who packed what. But secretly I knew they were relieved. I'd been the one to research road conditions, download offline maps, and make sure the RV had functioning air conditioning. Their eye-rolling was half annoyance, half gratitude. By midday, we piled our luggage into the hold outside. I carried a duffel bursting with granola bars, fresh fruit, and an entire crate of cold-pressed juices. Jared hoisted his guitar and 2 carry-on bags, while Emily balanced a stack of tattered novels next to a duffel the size of a small child. I handed them each a reusable water bottle and slapped a hand sanitizer dispenser onto Jared's case. He gave me a weak salute. Emily hugged me tightly. "Promise me no more spreadsheets once we're on the road," she said softly. I laughed. "Promising. Only spontaneous detours." She rolled her eyes again. But I spotted the corner of a grin. Deep down, I knew this trip was exactly what we all needed. A break from our routines. A chance to reconnect beneath open skies and evergreen forests. We climbed into the RV, its interior gleaming and neat thanks to my pre-trip inspections. I settled behind the wheel in the passenger seat, while Jared took the driver's seat and Emily folded herself into the sofa bench behind us. The engine rumbled to life, and we eased out of the driveway where we'd grown up. As soon as we hit the main road, Jared punched in the first song from my playlist, a vintage rock anthem that made Emily clap her hands in mock protest. "Are you kidding me?" she shouted over the beat. I leaned over to grin at her. "Don't worry, your turn's coming up." She raised an eyebrow, already scrolling through her phone to cue her favorite indie tracks. The first few miles slipped by in comfortable chatter and playful teasing. We stopped at the local diner for breakfast exactly as I'd scheduled. At 8:30 a.m. on the dot, pancakes arrived fluffy and golden, bacon crackled on the side. I watched my siblings tuck in enthusiastically, and for a moment, all of us felt like carefree kids again. Jared proclaimed the syrup life-changing, while Emily declared her hot chocolate the best she'd ever tasted. I scribbled a quick note in my planner, "Diner approved." Next stop, scenic overlook at mile marker 24, they groaned when I reminded them. But as we piled back into the RV, even Jared was humming along to the next song I cued. Emily's curls bounced in the rearview mirror as she tapped her foot to the rhythm. An hour later, we pulled off onto a gravel turnout. Ahead of us, the land opened up into undulating hills carpeted in wildflowers, framed by distant mountains. Jared grabbed his camera, and Emily bounded out with her novel tucked under her arm, but it didn't take long for her to abandon it. She wandered toward a knoll, plopped down, and watched the breeze ripple through the tall grass. Jared adjusted lens settings and snapped a series of shots that would grace Instagram later. I stood between them, arms outstretched, breathing in the fresh, pine-tinged air. For once, there were no spreadsheets, no color codes, just the 3 of us, breathing in sync with the wind. After 10 minutes of golden silence, I raised my voice so they'd hear. Time check, 11:15. "We have 20 minutes till departure." They both blinked, clearly torn between staying put and moving on. Finally, Emily slid off the hillside and trotted back toward the RV, dusting dry grass from her jeans. Jared followed, camera dangling from one hand as I closed the RV door behind them. I caught Jared's eye and gave a small nod. No words were needed. I knew he was impressed, even if he'd never admit it. Emily tossed me a thumbs up from the driver's seat as I climbed back in. My heart swelled at the sight of my siblings beside me, grumbling and smiling. Their energy, lifted by this shared adventure, we rolled back onto the highway, leaving the overlook and our comfort zones behind. Ahead awaited winding roads, hidden lakes, and campfires under starlit skies. My siblings might still tease me for my obsessive planning, but I was determined to prove that every detail mattered. That each carefully chosen stop would become a memory we'd revisit for years. As I settled into my seat, checked the upcoming waypoint, and passed out the water bottles, I realized this trip was more than just a weekend escape. It was our chance to rediscover what bound us together, beyond the eye rolls and artful complaints. And as the RV hummed down the road, I knew that when they finally saw my name on the bill for the entire weekend, they'd understand why I did it all. I guided the RV off the highway just as dusk began to settle, painting the sky in bruised purples and fiery oranges. The campground office was a weathered wooden shack, its closed sign swinging gently in the breeze. I parked beneath a tall oak where our reserved spot awaited, a flat stretch of gravel with a picnic table and fire ring. Jared hopped out first, stretching his arms over his head, while Emily gave the RV a critical once-over before emerging. I joined them, handing out flashlights and reminding them that we'd need to set up the campsite before darkness swallowed the forest. Jared and Emily gathered our gear from the storage bays, sleeping bags, folding chairs, and the collapsible grill I'd insisted on bringing. I lugged the cooler toward the picnic table, careful not to trip over a stray tree root. As I set it down, Emily glanced at the sky, frowning. "Is that rain I see?" she asked. I squinted upward. Dark clouds clustered beyond the canopy, their edges illuminated by fading sunlight. "Possibly," I admitted, "but we've got time to pitch the tent before it hits." She exchanged a worried look with Jared, and for a moment the usual eye-rolling gave way to genuine concern, under my direction. We assembled the tent in under 20 minutes, stakes hammered securely, rainfly lashed tight. I handed each of them a corner to hold steady as I threaded the poles, and they complied without complaint. The first rumbles of thunder echoed through the trees. "Rain check," Jared joked, but his voice had an edge of nervous humor. I zipped the tent closed, and we hustled to unload the rest of our gear: lanterns, cooking utensils, and a stack of board games tucked into my bag just in case. Emily groaned when she saw the games but helped me arrange the lanterns around the picnic table. "Fine," she sighed, "but I'm picking the first game." We flicked on the lanterns just as the first drops began to fall. Inside the RV's open door, the interior lights revealed our makeshift living room, complete with a rug I'd rolled out and throw pillows scavenged from home. Jared drifted toward the sofa, plucking his guitar from its case. "Atmosphere," he declared, strumming a mellow chord. Emily sat at the table, sorting through the board games until she settled on one neither of us had played before. I poured us each a cup of instant coffee from my thermos, its bitter warmth a comfort against the sudden chill. The rain tapped, a steady rhythm on the roof above, cocooning us in a world of whispered patter. For an hour we played, laughed, and listened to Jared's soft melodies. Emily's competitive streak emerged as she edged me out in the board game, her eyes gleaming with triumph. I pretended to sulk, then nudged her playfully. "Fair and square," I conceded. Outside, the rain intensified, and the wind rattled the windows. My heart leapt at each gust. I checked the tent zipper on my phone's flashlight beam, assured myself it was still secure, then turned back to my siblings. They glanced my way, a silent question in their eyes. Had I really thought of everything? I nodded, and they returned to the game, trusting me in a way that warmed me more than any blanket could. When the rain finally slackened, we emerged. The campsite was slick with mud, puddles reflecting the dim light of our lanterns. Despite the wet, the air smelled of pine and loam, crisp and alive. I retrieved the cooler and pulled out pre-marinated chicken skewers and foil packets of seasoned vegetables. Jared stoked the embers in the fire ring while Emily arranged the picnic table, like a table setting at a fancy restaurant, paper plates notwithstanding. I placed skewers on the grill, the sizzle blending with the crackle of damp wood. Steam curled from the foil packets as I peeled back the top, releasing the aroma of garlic and rosemary. Dinner was an unspoken triumph, our shoulders brushed as we leaned forward, sharing stories of high school misadventures and recalling our parents' holiday traditions. I watched them laugh beneath the string of lanterns, their faces lit by firelight and nostalgia. When the last skewer was gone, Jared poked at the coals with a long stick. "What's next on the itinerary?" he asked, eyebrows raised. Emily elbowed him. "Don't push her," she teased. I grinned, savoring their playful banter, stargazing. I announced, "Weather permitting, of course." They exchanged a look, skeptical but hopeful. I unpacked a folded blanket from the RV and spread it on the damp ground just beyond the fire's warmth. Jared handed me his camera with the wide-angle lens already attached. He wanted to capture the Milky Way if the clouds cleared. Emily sank beside me, tucking the blanket around her legs. I reclined, neck craned skyward. The clouds thinned, revealing pinpricks of light at first, then constellations that grew more vivid as night deepened. A single shooting star arced across the sky, and we all gasped. Emily's head lolled onto my shoulder. "This was worth the spreadsheets," she whispered. Jared exhaled slowly, reached his hand across the blanket, and gave mine a gentle squeeze. We lay in companionable silence, the forest humming softly around us. My heart pounded with contentment and a trace of pride. I'd orchestrated every detail, yet tonight felt spontaneous and real. I thought about tomorrow's planned sunrise hike to the lake, breakfast cooked over the fire, a swim in crystal clear water. My siblings, once skeptical of my obsessive lists, now relied on them to guide our adventure. The rainstorm, the muddy campsite, even the lingering chill, they'd all become part of the story we were writing together. I closed my eyes briefly, breathing in the earthy scent of wet pine. Just as I was about to speak, perhaps to remind them of our 6 a.m. wake-up call, a distant howl drifted through the trees. We froze, eyes wide in the dark. Jared tightened his grip on my camera and whispered, "Did you hear that?" Emily shivered, pulling the blanket tighter around us. My mind raced. Animal in the woods, whined through branches, or simply my imagination fueled by isolation. I cleared my throat, forcing a laugh that sounded hollow in my ears. "Probably just a coyote," I said, my voice cracked. They looked at me, and in those moments, I realized that no amount of planning could eliminate every unknown. Yet here, beside them, I felt capable of facing whatever came next. And as the lanterns flickered against the encroaching darkness, I knew the real adventure was only beginning. Morning light crept through the thin canopy of pine needles above us, dappling the campsite in soft greens and golds. I stirred first, blinking against the gentle glow of dawn. The rain-soaked ground beneath me had turned firm, the blanket stiff with dew. I uncurled my legs and stretched, careful not to wake Jared and Emily, still dozing beside me. A low mist hovered over the forest floor, wisps drifting like specters between slender trunks. The air smelled of wet earth and fresh beginnings. I slipped quietly from beneath the blanket, leaving the lantern glowing dimly inside the tent's vestibule, and headed toward the picnic table to brew coffee over the still sleeping fire pit, fumbling with matches. I coaxed a small flame to life and arranged kindling until a flicker of orange licked at damp logs. Steam curled from the metal coffee pot as I poured water and spooned in grounds, inhaling the bitter aroma. Each breath warmed me from the inside out. As the coffee bubbled, I retrieved breakfast supplies, eggs, bacon, and the loaf of homemade banana bread Emily had begged me to bring. I cracked eggs into the portable skillet and laid strips of bacon beside them. The sizzle sounded like celebration. I half expected the fire to flare into bright life, but it held steady just enough to cook our breakfast without smoking us out of the campsite. By the time I heard the faint creak of the tent flap, the coffee was poured into 3 battered enamel mugs. Emily emerged first, hair damp where she'd lain against my shoulder, her cheeks pink with sleep. She blinked at the fire pit, then at me. "You're up early," she murmured, rubbing her eyes. Jared appeared next, shaking his head to clear fogged thoughts. He stretched long arms above his head, a contented smile tugging at his lips. "Smells amazing," he said, settling onto a folding chair. I handed them each a mug and dished out portions of scrambled eggs and bacon. We ate in companionable silence, the only sounds the wind stirring branches and birds greeting the morning. The steam from our coffee curled in the chilly air. After our plates were bare, I produced the banana bread, thick slices still warm, and passed them around. Emily's eyes lit up. "You're a magician," she declared, taking a bite. Jared nodded in agreement, crumbs clinging to his beard. I felt a swell of pride, but also a flutter of nerves. Today was checkout day. And I'd been carrying around our weekend bill like a secret treasure. They'd rolled their eyes at my meticulous planning, bathroom stops, picnic schedules, campfire safety drills, but I knew deep down they trusted me. Now, I wanted them to understand why every detail mattered. Clearing the picnic table, I retrieved our final map, a folded sheet that lay damp from dew, and spread it across the table's surface. The route back home stretched in a neat red line, tracing back through rolling hills and timbered valleys, but before we hit the road, there was one more surprise. I pulled an envelope from my pocket, hands trembling slightly. "I thought you might want to see this," I said, handing it to Emily. The official campsite receipt slid out, and she frowned as she read the total. Her eyes widened. She passed it to Jared, who ran a finger down the itemized list. RV rental, nightly campsite fees, propane, firewood, cleaning service. At the bottom in bold letters was my name. Emily looked up, eyebrows knitting together. "You paid for everything?" Jared echoed, voice rough with disbelief. I nodded, heart pounding. I had the money set aside. My bonus at work arrived last week. I wanted to treat us to cover costs so we could just focus on each other. Silence fell, heavier than any thunderstorm. The forest seemed to hush in anticipation. My cheeks burned as I watched their expressions shift from surprise to gratitude. Emily's lower lip trembled. Jared's usual guarded facade softened. I braced for teasing, for their trademark eye rolls, but they never came. Instead, Emily reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Thank you," she said, voice small. "This means more than you know." Jared exhaled and pulled me into a half hug, keeping an arm around both of us. "You didn't have to," he murmured, voice thick. I squeezed them back, tears stinging my eyes. "I wanted to," I replied. I needed to do something big, something memorable for us. We sat together as the fog rose in thin veils from the ground, the map forgotten between us. Our shared silence was gentle, full of unspoken love. Packing up the campsite felt different after that. Every tent pole folded, every bag stowed, carried the weight of mutual trust. I took the lead once more, running through my mental checklist. Without prompting, trash packed, fire extinguished, campsite scoured for stray wrappers. Emily followed with sleeping bags, Jared with chairs and lanterns. By the time the RV's wheels crunched onto the gravel road, each of us moved with quiet purpose, a team galvanized by an act of kindness. I climbed into the passenger seat, map unfolded on my lap, while Jared slid behind the wheel. Emily settled on the sofa bench, clutching her novel but not opening it. I passed her a Pages sticker I'd printed for a halfway marker, a tiny memento of what we'd shared. The drive back was a tapestry of recounted moments. We laughed over the picnic at the overlook, reminisced about the rainstorm's sudden drama, and marveled at the clarity of the night sky. When we passed mile marker 20 for the one I'd noted on my spreadsheet, Jared honked and waved. Emily opened her novel just long enough to mark the first page. I tracked our progress on the map. But this time the lines felt less rigid, more fluid, as though the journey had redefined our bond. Every curve in the road reminded me that meticulous planning mattered, yes, but flexibility and heart mattered more. We rolled into my childhood home drive around mid-afternoon. Engine idling in the dappled shade of familiar oak trees. I killed the ignition and turned to face my siblings. Their hair was tousled, their cheeks sun-kissed and dusted with the memory of campfire ash. They looked at me with something new in their eyes. Respect, appreciation, a sisterly kind of love I'd longed for. Emily hopped down and hugged me fiercely, laughter bubbling in her throat. Jared clapped me on the shoulder. "Best weekend ever," he declared, voice warm. I grinned, closing my eyes to savor the moment. As we unloaded our gear, I realized this trip had done more than strengthen our sibling bond. It had taught me that generosity, like planning, wasn't about control, but about care, and in seeing my name on that bill, they hadn't merely acknowledged the cost. They'd witnessed the depth of my love laid bare in numbers and percentages and receipts. They understood now that every spreadsheet line had been an outline of memories waiting to be filled. Standing there between Jared and Emily, the sun setting behind us in shimmering gold, I knew we'd carry this weekend in our hearts forever. Every eye roll, every detail, every laugh sealed with love.